Aspects of Occultism by Dion. Narrated by Matthew Schmitz. 4. The Astral Plane. The astral plane has very rightly been called the plane of illusion, for people have such varied ideas concerning it. In studying the technique of the planes, one may fall into the error of regarding them only as separate and distinct modes of consciousness, whereas on closer consideration we shall see that they are interrelated and actually function in pairs. The words "kill out desire," as translated by H.P. Blavatsky in The Voice of the Silence, are frequently misinterpreted to mean that the astral plane, which correlates with desire and emotion, shall be inhibited from function as far as is practicable. Taking, however, the full context of that teaching, it is evident that the killing out of desire is a very lofty ideal of the soul when it shall have risen above the planes of the personality. But while functioning on the mundane plane in the physical senses, we must first kill out the desire for vice and use the forces of emotion and desire for good purpose. It is this point of view that I wish to put before you. Much of the information concerning the astral plane is gathered from psychics and spiritualistic sources with varying degrees of reliability, but the teaching I am giving here has come to us from a master on the inner planes. Do you understand the purpose of the plane of illusion, the astral plane? It serves more purposes than working out the frustration of desires. It is the plane of the manifestation of power for the physical plane. You need to realize that the astral plane is a plane of force, and the physical plane is a plane of form. That gives you the clue to a great deal if you think out its implications. Do you realize that there is no force on the physical plane and no form on the astral? Do you further realize that a thought form is a correct description? Then you will see that the cube of manifestation falls into two divisions, the physical half and the mental half, and the astral plane divides them. One half having mind for a background, and one half matter for a background. You may conceive, therefore, two planes of form with a plane of force connecting them. And you have, therefore, the three which is essential for function, the positive form of mind and the negative form of matter, and the emotional force flowing and returning which connects them. Perhaps this will be clearer if we tabulate it thus. Spiritual plane is force. Mental plane is form. Astral plane is force. Physical plane is form. We are taught that duality is necessary for manifestation, and we see here the duality of form and force which are essential to manifestation. Therefore, we must consider the astral forces in relation to physical and mental forms. We are also accustomed to regard the laws of polarity as on one plane, horizontal, but the esoteric teachings show that the same principle may be applied vertically, and the mental, positive stimulus may polarize with the physical, negative aspect, and that the astral forces, ensouling those forms with life, complete the trinity of function. This may be better understood by students of the Kabbalistic tree of life, which we have the side pillars in polarity and the central pillar representing the flow of life forces direct. Now what you want to realize is this, that there is upon that plane of pure force a population of forms which do not derive from that plane at all. They derive, firstly, in evolutionary order from the plane of mind. Pure mind supplies the first thought forms, and these forms, being in relation to feelings, serve as vehicles of expression for the feelings. They are all symbolic and geometrical in form. These are the primary forms of the astral. They are the oldest and the highest and the purest form types. They are the bases of physical form. Then, in contradistinction to these, are those astral forms which are evolved in consciousness out of physical sensation. They have matter for a background. If you want to understand the astral plane, think of the true astral plane as consisting of streaming rays of light without form at all, and the forms of the astral, whether derived from mind or matter, are distinct from the pure emotional forces, as are the human beings from the land they walk about on. You have, therefore, the plane and its inhabitants. Now the inhabitants of the astral plane are creatures of mind. The life and function of the astral goes on behind them and through them, but it is not they. The astral thought form is a creation of the mind, whether it be a primary creation of mind working direct on emotions, or whether it be a secondary creation of mind, working on emotions stimulated by sensation or physical. The ordinary untrained human mind functions only when stimulated by sensation. Therefore, all its thoughts are determined by the nature of the sensation which stimulates them. But the mind of the occultist knows that the primary form is the mental form, and it can make those forms independently of physical sensation. A form on the astral plane acts as a channel for and determines the configuration of the astral forces, and therefore all manifestations of force in matter depend upon the astral thought form and are determined by it. Matter adheres to type because the forces function through thought forms derived from matter, so that matter gives rise to the form and the form to matter in a never-ending and stereotyped circle. It is fixed and defined. But although no variation can take place from the plane of matter, variation is possible from the plane of mind. And if a new thought form be created on the astral, a new form would appear on the physical. The physical form will give rise to the appropriate sensation, and the sensation will reinforce the thought form, and so the cycle will become stereotyped in its turn. You have then the thought form on the astral and the physical form on the material plane, soul and body, of whatever object or organism or organization or happenings may be under consideration. You have, in fact, the cause and the effect. The astral cause giving rise to the physical effect, and the physical effect recreating the astral cause. You will realize from this that the forms of the astral are all mental images, and some of the product of sensation, and some are the product of imagination. It is by availing yourself of the powers of the image-forming faculties of the mind that you can set the astral causes in motion. Whatever image you can make in the imagination, provided it be in accordance with cosmic law and therefore possible of manifestation, if you make it sufficiently clearly in all its parts to have a workable mechanism, and if you hold it long enough and steadily enough and pour in the force of the will strongly enough, will come to pass on the physical plane in manifestation, or upon whatever plane it shall be directed to. But in all your making, remember this, that you will have to face the consequences of your creation, whatever it may be, and good intentions will not protect you from the results of an error of judgment. And when you elect to use the powers of the human mind, you take risks. But remember also this, that those who serve God always take risks because they know them to be worth taking. And the expression of the logoidal mind can only be brought through into the plane of manifestation by those who are prepared to take the risk of endeavoring to perceive the abstract and concrete it as best they may. The spiritual forces cannot work themselves out on the plane of form, now that the form is so highly organized, without the use of intermediaries, and so some have to be found who will take the risk of endeavoring, with the finite consciousness, to discern the mind of God and express it on the planes of form. There is an interesting corroboration of the intermediaries who work out the mind of God on its passage from spirit to matter in the communications received from the astral plane by the Reverend G. Vale Owen, which has reference to the cooperation of thought and emotion. No emotion, no thought, here is without its outer manifestation. All you see around you from your place upon the earth is the manifestation of thought. The source of all thought is He from whom it proceeds, and to whom it returns in never-ending cycle. Between times, this thought stream passes through the mentality of personalities of varying degrees of authority, and also of loyalty or oneness with Him. This thought stream, passing through the princes, archangels, angels, and spirits, becomes manifest through them externally in heavens, hells, constellations of suns, sun systems, races, nations, animals, plants, and all those entities which you call things. All these come into existence by means of persons thinking from themselves outward, when their thoughts take on expression tangible to the senses of those who inhabit the sphere in which the thinkers dwell or with which they are in touch. To resume the teaching, the following remarks on the difficult subject of astral shells are illuminating. When the time comes for the initiate to claim his freedom from incarnation, he asks for and obtains the task of concreting the cosmic idea. If, as very rarely happens, he succeeds in concreting it perfectly, he is not destroyed by it, but undergoes that liberation which is known in Christian theology as translation. He walks with God and is not. But if, as more often happens, he does but bring a contribution to the building of the temple, the imperfection of the work destroys him. That is to say, it breaks up the personality. Now, the individuality, which has a personality broken in this way, is karma-free, because when a personality is thus shattered by the cosmic forces, death on all the planes takes place simultaneously, and there is therefore no karma. All that is left to the immortal spirit is the mental picture, which is sometimes called the seed atom of the concrete. That mental picture abides in the atmosphere of the upper astral or the Akashic records, and is the sole link between the spirit and the plane of form. The spirit, then, has for its vehicle the abstract mind, stored with the garnered riches of the evolution of that entity. It has also the simulacrum on the astral, but that simulacrum is only the shadow it threw in the past on the plane of form. The entity that elects to function in relation to the advancement of the human race galvanizes that simulacrum into a transient life in order to communicate with those whose consciousness cannot rise above forms. When once the consciousness of a human being has become aware of the galvanized simulacrum, the same cycle of cause and effect as that already described takes place in his consciousness until his imagination builds up a clear image of the master, and into that image the powers of that entity flow and function. The difference between the man who touches astral imagination only and the man who, by astral imagination, touches spiritual actualities is that the former in his concepts can rise no higher than the astral imagination, and the latter has in his soul spiritual realization and aspiration, which he brings through into brain consciousness by means of the astral imagination. From these teachings, it will be seen how important the astral plane is. When we think, we create astral images, and when in meditation we seek inspiration, it comes through astral imagination. There are other and more subconscious ways in which the astral forces work. For instance, in deep sleep, when consciousness is dissociated from the physical senses, the body will be recuperated by astral power. The physical etheric body is fed, as it were, by the astral forces, and the astral force is controlled by the form aspect of the mental body. For without form, the astral would be diffused and without function. The earth, sun, moon, vegetation, and all life forces which derive from the one source of life, God, have their astral aspect and reach us through the etheric body. We must therefore learn to give proper value to the astral plane and not strive to repress its power, for if we do, those powers may flow forth into various conditions of astral pathologies and have their physical reaction. The forces of the lower astral plane are directed towards the personal and physical well-being, whereas the forces of the upper astral state of consciousness, with their aspiration and uplifting powers, have a background of universal well-being. A healthy astral condition manifests itself on the physical plane in orderliness, good feeling, love of art, music, and things that appeal to the better feelings, and unhealthy astral conditions will open the door to undesirable contacts arising from unworthy thoughts and desires, dirt, and disorder. Death does not change our astral consciousness, for we are assured that what we are now, so shall we be when we awaken on the astral plane, free from the limitations of the physical senses. Let us then prepare for that state here and now, so that by realization we shall hasten our progress towards the spiritual goal, which we can only reach by way of the astral plane.